With the left still parading David Hogg around as a political prop, it should come as no surprise that he made yet another demand for a gun ban. Too bad for him, he received 38 million kicks in the groin on live TV instead. You don't want to miss this. Although kids have every right to an opinion, what the liberal media is doing to the survivors of the Florida shooting is downright tragic. In essence, they are using them in hopes that the emotional factor they provide will be enough to manipulate the American people. Making matters worse, they've cast others aside as irrelevant simply for having a different opinion. Luckily, it's not working, but that doesn't mean they're going to stop anytime soon. Proving just that, Morning Joe on MSNBC recently invited infamous Parkland survivor David Hogg onto the show for yet another interview. Despite the fact that the kid has embarrassed himself more than he's done any amount of good, leftist networks seem to love him simply because he parrots their propaganda. Like a well-trained monkey, Hogg came onto the show and did what he was supposed to do, railed against firearms. Everything was going as expected as he made more demands for a gun ban, but then, things took a rather odd turn that left even Hogg in complete shock. The torment was clearly seen all across Hogg's face as he received what can only be described as 38 million kicks to the groin on live television. They say that even a blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while, and that seems to be the case when it came to Joe Scarborough most recently. One can only imagine how shocked viewers were as the MSNBC host pushed back against Hogg and slapped him with a little bit of truth. During the Morning Joe episode, MSNBC host Joe Scarborough asked David Hogg what he thought of the Harvard polls, which showed that millennials are more progressive on just about every other issue, but actually are more conservative when it comes to guns, the Daily Caller reports. What message do you have? Instead of just to elected leaders, what message do you have to your own generation and other millennials who are more conservative than most would expect on this issue? Scarborough asked of Hogg. As heard in the clip, Morning Joe had previously brought on John Della Volpe from Harvard Institute of Politics to speak about opinions on guns across the country. Their polls found that millennials are much more conservative when it comes to their thoughts on banning guns than any other generation. Even better yet, they make up the biggest voting demographic in America right now. As Politico reports, respondents aged 18-29 are the least likely in the country to support a renewed ban on assault weapons, at 49%, a fact that has helped drive nationwide support down to a record low. Pew's data suggest that those falling in the youngest age range have dropped the furthest in support for gun control since 2000, when the alternative is presented as gun rights. In short, that means roughly half of the 75.4 million millennials here in America oppose the idea of banning the Arkansas 15. That's around 38 million people. And, as clearly seen in his Morning Joe interview, a stunned Hogg was thrown back and started to flail when someone finally presented him with the facts. Out of desperation, he did the only thing he could think of. He called the polls biased. One thing I think is important to remember about those polls is conservative students and conservative people in the millennial generation are typically a lot more politically active, so the polls may be biased in that way because many students that have more liberal views may just not partake in them, he alleged, as reported by Age Review. So there may be a skew in the polls that way. The left has seemingly picked the perfect puppets. Not only are they just kids, but they have the added bonus, for lack of a better word, of being mass shooting survivors. So, people typically won't disagree with them because of what they've gone through. And of course, the left knows this, and they don't mind exploiting it to progress their agenda. The left would be doing the country a big favor if they were honest for just a minute or two. Personally, I have no interest in bashing children, but there's a reason they're not allowed to do things like vote. They don't have the ability to fully think things through like an adult does. If a kid lies, it needs to be corrected, no matter who it is.